Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you. That's all right. Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you about, as far as your memory goes back to early life experiences, when you were little, what were the symptoms that you noticed, perhaps before you even got a diagnosis?
So, believe it or not, my Tourette's isn't anything neurological. It's neurological, obviously, So, my actual diagnosis is severe, complex, abnormal Tourette syndrome. So, I don't have the typical start to Tourette's, but what it was is I had a sore throat when I was 14 years old. Oh no! And that then led to headaches, and they now think it was due to strep throat. But my head started twitching, and I then developed what they thought was alien hand syndrome at the time. So they said, oh, it's teenage tics. And then I had these full body fits, but I was still awake and in pain while it was happening. For a few years. So they were just like, yeah, it's pseudo seizures. Like, pseudo seizures is what they practically say you're putting them on, which I wasn't. Wankers. And then I woke up one morning when I was 21 years old and went to work and thought I was going to have one of my funny 5 minutes, as I call them. Sat down in my manager's office and vocal tics galore. And then I've gone to my neurologist and he turned the monitor to me and said, yeah, I've been waiting for this for 6 years. I just didn't want to tell you. I wanted it to come out on its own.
So life before the tics, was everything normal? You didn't really have symptoms until you were 14?
I had mental issues, like mental health issues. So depression, very angry. Like I was a bit naughty at school sort of thing. But yeah, no, before that I was normal.
Wow. And then what were the early signs for you? What were the things that you noticed initially?
So it was when the headache came. I was doing like a drama performance to school. Wankers. And so when the headache went, it almost completely went. So I was like, oh, but it was like somebody had popped the balloon that was filling up tightly on my head, and I had all this space rush back. It was bizarre because my head was ticking. It was like somebody was pulling like on a muscle in the back of my neck, as if to say like. So yeah, and that all happened all in the space of 20 minutes from the headache alleviating to the head tics, which then I had to go for CT scans, MRI scans to make sure there wasn't anything dangerous in my brain. And yeah.
So let me make sure I've got this right. So there was all this pressure and it kind of felt like an elastic band being pulled, and then it was a kind of a release, and then from that moment was when you had the tics started.
Yeah.
And what did you make of this at the time? What was going through your mind?
It was weird because obviously my school was like, don't come in for a good month or two, sort yourself out first, we don't know what's going on. And then I lost a lot of GCSEs due to it because I was 14, so I was in like year 10 going into year 11, and then it obviously got a little bit worse during year 11. Beautiful. I'm not one. But like, yeah, it was just, it didn't help with the puberty stage, let's put it that way. Like growing up, I kind of, you already feel a bit crappy during that stage anyway and feel a bit alone and isolated, and then this thing comes along that makes you more alone and isolated as you go along. So
did anyone misunderstand this and put it down to bad behavior when you were that age? Did anyone think that it was being something that you had control over and were just putting on?
To be fair, no, I've met more adults in the street at this age have a go at me more than I was when I was a kid. So like I've had people turn around and call me rude. I've experienced kids in like following me around the shop laughing at me. I've had shop assistants in their uniform video recording me on their phone, and they were in uniform and they worked in that store as well. So
that I find that very interesting and quite surprising that actually you get subjected to more bullying now than actually when you were young.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite extraordinary.
I think it's because where it all happened when I was younger, and I had friends like there from the very beginning. Like, do you know what I mean? It was kind of like everybody knew me. Oh, Ryan's got something wrong with him. We're not gonna.
So people kind of had an understanding that this was a difficulty that you developed, and therefore there was a lot more empathy around what you were experiencing. So really, it's strangers have been the worst towards you.
Yeah. Oh, not my best moments in life. I can tell you that one.
How does that affect you emotionally when you see that someone is actually targeting you and not considering your feelings?
I now don't go out without earphones in. I don't want to talk to anyone. Norbert, wankers, cocksucker. Yeah, Norbert. I don't talk to anyone now. If I can avoid it, I will.
Does that mean you've had to experience a lot of social anxiety, feeling really uncomfortable in social situations?
Very much a load of social anxiety, tons of it.
Yeah, I really feel.
Just because I'm a little bit different to everyone else.
Yeah, I really feel for you, because anyone can experience social anxiety. People who don't even have anything that's like, something that would draw attention to themselves. So it must be extremely difficult for you, because this is something you don't have any control over, and it will draw attention to you. And then unfortunately you found that some people are extremely rude and inconsiderate and do behaviors that really would upset you.
Yeah, I mean, like, I like my tics have said and done some questionable things, like walking down a street, nearly pulling off a very, very innocent lady's hijab and saying that it's too warm for a scarf. That's not me. I'm not racist at all. Whereas, like, so I've got that aspect of what on earth is going to come out of my brain and my mouth, and what are people going to say about it? Right. I've been accused of being on drugs before. I've even been accused by a medical health professional, an ambulance lady, that I wasn't fit to look after children while their parent was like, well, he was my godchild and he was nearly 9 and he knows how to deal with my Tourettes more than probably anybody. But because she was on his mum's on holiday, she got the council to ring up her mum saying that she's left her son with an unstable person, which wasn't nice. So
your Tourette's is not just the verbal tics, but actually there's a behavioural element as well, where you end up being, it's like an impulse that you don't have any control over.
Yeah, it's kind of like, the way I describe it is, when you see that big red button at the bottom of an escalator or top where it says stop, and you just go, oh, what would happen if I pushed that? You have that self-control. I don't. I'd push it, and yeah.
Yeah, that must be so hard.
That's how a tic feels like. But then when people tell me to stop ticking, the only way I can describe that is tell somebody who's about to sneeze that they're not allowed to sneeze. Yeah. When they're on the verge of sneezing, yeah,
you have to release it. Have you had any treatment? And tell me the history of treatment. What's your experience been like? What was helpful? What was less helpful?
Yeah, right. So I've gone through aripiprazole and haloperidol, which didn't work.
And for the audience, can you just explain what that is?
So they're like, I think it's been so long since I've had them. They're like antipsychotic drugs, I believe they may be. But yeah, I was allergic to them. They both made my tongue swell up and stick out like a dog, and yeah, that wasn't very nice. And then been on so many different antidepressants. So I'm now on sertraline, which is 150 milligrams for sertraline a day. And the only thing that has helped me is because I've got functional neurological disorder as well, so FND. So they put me on pregabalin for that, and I'm on that 300 milligrams.
And could you explain what functional neurological disorder is?
So functional neurological disorder is after I've had my tic attacks and all that, or my brain gets overly stressed. I'd lose the use of my legs, so I'd end up having Parkinson's and MS, sort of difficulties walking. So I've got a wheelchair for that one. I don't really need to use the wheelchair, but I don't like staying in anyway. So if I am having those days, I'd like to go out. So I'd use wheelchair. But so yeah, that can be a bit difficult, and I can lose my they put me on pregabalin for my functional neurological disorder. And that's kind of helped because it also helps with anxiety as well. That helps then me control my tics a little bit better because I'm not anxious and I'm not constantly thinking about what's going to go wrong.
Wow.
So
tell me about the emotional link to being triggered and how severe it is related to like what you are feeling at particular times.
So what things that trigger my tics more often? So it can be anything. I could be overexcited. I could be very sad. I could be very anxious. And I could be confident, and it's a mixture of things. I can't go too high on every level, right. Or otherwise sometimes I end up putting myself in that state because I get overexcited about something and all that lot. So,
is it quite strong emotions, both positive and negative, and there's a huge emotional relevance to when you get triggered? So, for example, if you were in a very calm state, very relaxed, would you be less likely to be triggered?
Oh, yeah. So like now I'm in my house, I'm kind of like nice and calm, and there's candles on over there and the turtles swimming around. So I'm kind of like in my relaxed state, but as soon as I come out of that, I'm very yes, as soon as my front door is shut behind me, I don't like it.
Yeah. What about cognitive behavioural therapy to help with tics? Have you ever had any of that kind of treatment?
I'm going through that at the moment with a neuropsychologist. So I have my neurologist that deals with the neurological side of Tourette's. And then I've got the neuropsychologist that deals with my FND, my dissociative identity disorder.
Oh, you have DID as well. I'm a DID specialist.
Oh, are you?
Yes, yeah. And it's not all the time I meet people with DID, so that's very interesting. How many alters do you have?
One. His name's Robert, and he's completely different to me. And that's I got this little finger ring to kind of symbolize him because he's yeah.
Is Robert the same age as you, or he's a different age?
Well, he comes out sometimes as like if the voice changes, it sounds like a 50-year-old man that smoked about 70 fags a day at the bottom of Camden Market. But then there's times where he can be like a playful child. But I can't get too angry because then he'll just want to sit there and smash everything up. And like with the housing recently, my partner had to stop me from going downstairs with a bat and smashing in the office windows.
When you say you, do you mean he had to stop Robert from doing this?
Yeah, so like I had him screaming in my head, if you kind of know what I mean, like, oh, we got to go do this. And then when he gets into that sort of like mode, it kind of rubs off on me, so I kind of get the confidence, and then it kind of lets him out a little bit more, which is what I don't really, because as much as people say he's nice, I don't think he's that nice. So
do you have direct access to Robert? Can you communicate with him, or you don't have direct access?
I have like conversations, and I mean, the last few nights I've had dreams where it's almost like I'm talking to myself, but it's him, but he looks like me, and he's probably a little bit more muscular, so I don't know if like I'm projecting what I want to look like on him, but
yeah, he looks different physically. Does Robert have Tourette's as well?
Yeah. So what that is where Tourette's is an actual fault with the brain and the way the brain's wired, and like kind of what I've been told is DID is sort of more mental health than something in the brain.
Yeah, DID comes from trauma. So it will be a defense mechanism where you'll have experienced trauma and you haven't felt that you've been able to cope with it emotionally, and then the alter.
I can kind of pinpoint on what that is. I'm not going to say too much about it, but like I can kind of pinpoint on how that is. And obviously with the housing and that recently, he's probably come out a little bit more. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Oh, no, I think the red hair was more his idea than mine.
I understand.
But it's kind of like I needed some war paint going on, so.
So you've it's not just the Tourette's, but you've got these other difficulties.
So I'm labelled as the worst case of Tourette's in the UK.
Where did that label come from?
My neurologist, who is big in like the Tourette's, like Tourette's action charities, and he does like many different Tourette's seminars and all this like, so he's big in that field. Oh, so what I think that mainly compares to is obviously when I'm out, I'm a lot worse, and also my tic attacks, because I've touched wood. I've not had one for the last few weeks, but I had 20 in the space, 10 in the space of 5 weeks.
Tell me about a tic attack compared to just everyday tics that you experience.
So, a tic attack literally feels like somebody's probably prodding my spine with a cattle rod and electrocuting me that much to the point where I can feel everything tense. I can feel the bones crunch underneath the immense pressure of the weight of the muscle tensing. And so people think my screaming is my tic, but it's not. That's actually me in genuine horrifying pain. And like I said, feels like sometimes my bones are burning from the inside out, and yeah, it's not nice. So I'm doubled over, and so
yeah. And you made a really good point there that actually you have got mental health difficulties, but actually you've got a neurological disorder as well, and that it might be very easy for people to confuse what's what and kind of label things as all down to mental health, when actually the neurological disorder is something that is not just a mental health difficulty that just needs to be treated like that it's far more complicated.
The rewiring in my brain that's gone wrong, so they don't actually fully understand where Tourette's or how it starts, because like I said, I could have had it, and then I've had the strep throat when I was younger that exacerbated it or exaggerated it, but nobody's sure. So
yeah. And it sounds like it's made life very complicated for you. So tell me about, how has this impacted all elements of your social life, including friendships, relationships, just going out and socializing and being able to enjoy your life?
So I've lost friends over it. Friends that, it was funny that when I was on TV and all that lot, they were all next to me like, I don't know, a fly to rubbish sort of thing. And then once that sort of wore off, it was right, Ryan's faking it, Ryan's doing this, which then my partner got into his head that I was faking it and all that lot, and he realizes I don't now. But like they were a toxic group of people. If it wasn't their way, then it was no one's way. And then my mum, it took a while for her to come to terms with it. Like, she knew what it was, but she didn't know what it was, if you know what I mean. She did, like, and then my dad was the best, and my sister were the best, to be fair, out of everybody. They were the most accepting.
So because this is different, and this is, although there has been in recent years a lot more about Tourette's in the media, which, you know, really the awareness is better than it was before, but because this is a condition that people don't really understand so well, you found that actually, although people know the diagnosis, they can't really empathize with you in the way that you've needed. I'm really curious that when you're caring for the turtles, when you're caring for animals, does it take your focus off your condition? And does your condition sometimes kind of ease a bit when you're...
These are my babies. I have over 50 of them, so like it gives me something to do during the day, because if I didn't have these, I'd be very much looking into deep brain stim surgery. So
Yeah.
if I was to lose these, I would lose my life, basically.
Does that mean when you're kind of focusing outwards and, you know, you're focusing more on the environment and things in the environment, including like the turtles and anything around you, that you're not kind of focusing so much on the condition, and therefore you get a little bit of a relief from it?
And they don't focus on my condition either, which makes it better.
Yeah.
So because they're literally just wanting me for the food and for, hi, look at me, I'm here, I'm cute, love me, and I'm like, you were fed 5 minutes ago. So like, I think it's that aspect. They don't care.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about cognitive behavioural therapy for tics. So you were saying that you're having that at the moment. How's that been going for you?
It's kind of at the moment stopped because of the whole COVID and like having on waiting times and all that lot. So it was talked about, but it wasn't sort of started, I don't think. Like the last time I saw my neurologist and my neuropsych was, whoa, knobhead, whoa, wankers, I got a third eye. Yeah, the last time I saw my neuropsych, he started it, but obviously he was more interested in how I was feeling because COVID started like earlier this year and all that lot. So he was more concerned on how I was more than like starting any treatment at the moment. So
what do you understand about CBIT, Cognitive Behavioural Therapy for Tics?
I actually don't know, to be fair, about it. So I know it kind of helps break a habit.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is based on delaying the tic as much as possible and really sitting with that urge and practicing that as a strategy. And then as a result of practicing that, people tend to find that their tics decrease. So it takes it's a very difficult thing. It takes a lot to try and keep those tics in and sit with that urge. So it's kind of like pulling the elastic band, but then keeping it there for as long as possible, and then kind of sitting with that feeling of wanting to kind of release it. Well, I'm just curious, what would that be like for you, or what has it been like for you when you try to hold in the tics? Is that something that's very uncomfortable?
So whenever I do intentionally hold in my tics, it always ends up with me having a tic attack. So I actually don't know if that worked, to be completely honest. But like I said, if I didn't have my coping mechanisms that I do now, and say it was all taken away from me, I'd be looking into surgery because it gets bad. I mean, I'm having a good day today, but it gets bad, and I want to live my life. I don't want to be constantly like.
Yeah. Tell me about your coping mechanisms.
My coping mechanism is my turtle rescue and my animals. And then I like to sit down, watch a few like TV shows. I'm not really a big film fan. I like my TV shows. And then I like to read. So anything that keeps the focus off of me sometimes. And then because I know I do TikTok and I put myself out on social media and all that lot, but I'm not one for loving myself, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So like, I've never liked the focus on me that much. It's always been uncomfortable. And then obviously when this came along, the focus was on me 24/7 and I couldn't deal with it. So I escaped through it to different worlds and to help me.
How has this impacted your self-esteem?
Massively, because the pregabalin has made me put on a bit of weight and grow some man boobs. I'm trying to become proud of them, but
forming a relationship with having this condition. Could you tell me about the journey that you went on in relation to establishing an intimate relationship despite having a serious neurological condition?
Charlie met me. I was just normal, and every now and then, turtle's gonna fall over. And every now and then, I had my tic fits, and that's really about it. And then, yeah, it was about a year and a half into our relationship, almost 2 years into our relationship, and it started. Yeah. Everything just blew up out of proportion. I was at university. He had to come get me from university because it got too bad. And so, yeah, and then it's just all went downhill from there. But he's supportive now, and he's my full-time carer as well. So
I want to ask about focus. You know, when you're having a conversation with someone and then you end up ticking a lot, do you find that you're just so used to it, you can just keep redirecting your focus back onto the conversation again? Or is it very stressful for you trying to have a conversation when the tics are interrupting the flow?
I mean, like you've noticed that when I'm talking to you, if I tic, I just breathe over it and go straight back, or sometimes I'll answer back to myself. Like I remember ticking paedophile in front of you and I go, I'm not that one. But when I answer back to it, it's kind of me sort of going, having a little play with them. But 9 times out of 10, I just breeze over them. And to the point where some people go, you haven't ticked. And I'm like, I have. You just haven't noticed because I don't focus on them.
Yeah. So you've got a great strategy of just like you don't really notice your tics so much. You just carry on. And I've noticed that throughout our interview, that you're, if you tic, you just carry on what you were going to say anyway. Therefore, we're having a very straightforward conversation where there's no, for me, I'm not distracted by it. However, I imagine that you get all different reactions from other people who they're having kind of an emotional response to the tics. Perhaps that makes them feel uncomfortable, or perhaps they're getting distracted by it. What do you see in other people when you're just trying to have a normal conversation with them and they're kind of reacting in all different ways?
So when I'm being loud, I can see it in my mum's face sometimes, and it's kind of like, like she's kind of just sort of like, yeah. But she's always like quiet anyway. She's never really liked the loud of anything, like fireworks, loud noises, loud people. But then I have some people that sort of go, "What did you just do?" And because sometimes I don't explain. Sometimes I go, "I have Tourette's. Just you hear me tick, breathe over it, sorted, read between the sentences, sort of thing." Yeah. And then I have some people that, like I said, what did you just do? And they're like, "Oh, I've got Tourette's." And they're like, "Oh, no way, do you swear? Can you do this?" And I'm like, "That's not the conversation I was just having with you. Can you just put my," like, most of the time it's from people at shops, and it's kind of like, just put my stuff down the conveyor belt, please, thank you. Like, I'm not interested in having this conversation with somebody that I'm going to share 2 minutes of my life with. Yeah. Especially when, "Oh, do you swear?" Yes, I have coprolalia, but that's not the main form of Tourette's.
So you get a lot of curious responses from people. There's a lot of kind of curiosity.
Some people are actually genuinely interested in how it started and what Tourette's is and all that lot. Whereas, like I said, it's the ones that go straight to, "Becky, swear, can you get away with it?" that I have no time for.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's you've got the kind of all the different ranges of reactions and comments that you get from people. Tell me about the brain the surgery. So you mentioned that one option for you in the future might be that you may have to consider a serious surgery.
So when I get to see my neurologist next, I'm going to talk to him like face to face. But what it is I had to wait till I was 25, and I'm 25 now. And because they say that your brain stops growing or aging at the age of 25 or thereabouts, and deep brain like stimulation is where they put like battery packs here, and then they wire it all up, and then they put like rods in your brain, and it's meant to electrocute and sort of like bring all the electrodes and the electric pulses sort of back to normal. And then if they feel that, I don't know how, it's something as if like I'm ticking too much, it will sort of give my brain that I won't feel the shock, but a little shock and it'll stop. So there's only a 50% success rate of that though, so I'm not too sure, but I need to think about it a bit more.
At this point, how much do you how much have you come to adapt around your condition and accept it?
Tourette's isn't me. I'm not Tourette's. Tourette's is me, as I say. So like I mold it, twist it to what I want to use it. But it does get to the point where sometimes I can't be bothered. Yeah. Like I go into the bathroom just purely to have tics and all that lot because I'm just too tired. I don't want to tick in front of my partner. Like I get embarrassed, even though, like I said, we've been together 7 years. It's still embarrassing. And yeah, Tourette's is something that I know there is no cure for, whereas I know there's been successful treatments for DID and all that lot, but I think it's just the fact that there's no cure for Tourette's or tics. So it sort of embarrassed me a little bit because I'm kind of like, what am I going to get like when I'm older? Like I've got my nephew, he's only just started taking solid foods, he's that young, so like, yeah.
Since the condition started to where you are now, how different a position are you in to when it first started? Because I imagine it took a lot to try to adapt to having this condition.
I kind of want to say I'm back to where I was when I found out that I had it. Like I've gone full circle of why me? Why is this happening to me? Why? Oh, no, bit wankers. Like and all that lot. So Yeah, I'm kind of full circle. Like I kind of enjoyed it at one point because it's just like, what on earth is wrong with me, sort of thing. Like, but now it is very much annoying, and I kind of just want it to stop for a while.
So how many times have you been hospitalized over this condition?
Too many.
Several.
Yeah, there's not much to do. I have a care plan for when I have these tic attacks, but there's not much anyone can do except from them come over and Entonox and make sure I don't go to hospital for it. So, but then I have gone to hospital because they've got too worse, and there's a hospital that threatened to phone the security on me at one point because I kicked a wall, and apparently that was my fault. When even though I had my whole family there and my partner and a friend saying it's not his fault, like, I don't like hospitals.
So it sounds like you've kind of been through a whole journey of treatment, and it's been quite disappointing for you. You haven't really got the relief that you want.
Yeah, I kind of feel like a guinea pig. Like, I've just been going, right, that's not working, we'll do this. That's not working, we'll do this. Right, this works for a few other people with Tourette's. We'll see if it works for you. Right, that's not working, we'll do this. And
Yeah. Have you met other people with Tourette's who might have it to kind of a similar level as you?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I've got a few people that I video call, and I've had people who have Tourette's look up to me because of the TV shows and my YouTube videos and my TikToks and all that lot. So I have, but I can't be around them again for too long because they obviously they trigger, like, people with Tourette's will trigger other people's Tourette's tics, but it gets again to the point where I get too much of that pressure. It could be making them tick a lot, but for me, I get that pressure and I need to escape the room within about 15 minutes. So I can't even go to Tourette meetups or anything like that without.
That's very interesting. What is it about seeing someone else tick that leads to you ticking more?
Ooh. I think it's because you kind of focusing on them, like, ticking. You're like, oh, you've got Tourette's as well. So, like, we're the same. And then, like, you kind of focusing on them ticking, and then that kind of goes, oh, I'm ticking as well. And then just, you know what I mean? It kind of bounces off. So you see them tick and your brain goes, oh, I'm going to tick. Wow. It's like, sometimes I feel like there's a weird energy that like the brain's just going, there's somebody else there with Tourette's. Let's have a bit of fun with this. And yeah, so it's kind of a bit of annoying.
Yeah, so it kind of makes you aware of the tics, and the more aware you are of the tics, the more likely they are. What's it like for you doing this interview right now? Because we're focusing so much on it. Does that actually make it harder for you? And does that make the tics a bit worse because we're talking about it?
I mean, like, I've been fiddling with this underneath here, so that's been helping relieve, like, some of the pressure. But at the moment, like I said, I'm having a good day, and then, like, just above you, where you're on my phone, is my turtles. So I'm sort of like sometimes looking at them. And they kind of, I've got things here that help me calm my brain. Whereas if I was like at a Tourette meet, I wouldn't have the turtles. I wouldn't have the security of my own space, or if I'm out of town. Do you know what I mean? So it gets worse. So I've got used to having to look at everything, and I've got OCD as well and all that lot. So I get up at midnight and look at all the animals to make sure they're sleeping. And if they're not asleep, I want to know why. And
that must be really difficult for you, that it's gotten in the way of both your education and also your working life as well.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in an aquarium where, like, you sold fish for, like, the Aquarius hobbyists and all that lot. So I used to love that job. But when I was in 2 weeks for hospital, like in hospital, I kind of turned around to them myself and I said, it's not fair on me. You put me on for a shift and say I don't turn up and it's just me and the manager or me and someone else. Like, that's not fair. You can't then expect somebody to jump in and say, oh, look, yeah, I'll work. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of left on good terms on that one. I didn't want to let the company down, so I left. I mean, like, a lot of people have watched me with my animals and realised that the animals help calm me down. And I'm not so different to other people. I just make a few noises and swear. But saying that, not everybody with Tourette's even does that. It could be motor, it could be, I don't know, one phrase and not swearing. And so it's there's so much people need to learn about it, and I'm kind of happy with the fact that maybe I've contributed to that.
Yeah. Is the best reaction someone can give you to just ignore it and just focus on you and focus on what you have to say and ignore the Tourette's, or do you want people to have the curious element where they ask you some questions, but that kind of means it's going to distract from what you otherwise would be talking about?
So I 9 times out of 10 I like it if people just ignore them. Ooh. And then like some funny things will come out of my mouth, and even I'll be rolling on the floor almost like needing to run to the toilet because I do not know where it's come from. I don't know how it's managed to get in my brain in the first place, and it's like, and then like I don't mind if I'm laughing and people can see that I'm laughing at them. Yeah. Have a laugh with me, just don't laugh at me.
Yeah, got it. And I want to just understand the behavioral element where the behaviors get completely out of control and completely compulsive. Could you just tell me a little bit more about that side of it? Because that sounds like the most concerning, where you actually can't control the behavioral element.
Like when I get angry, the tics can get worse, but then they become more aggressive tics. So they become more motor and wanting and like hitting things and all that lot. And then like when I'm crying, I don't know why, but it exacerbates the crying a hell of a lot more. So I'm crying 10 times harder than what I should be, really. Wow. And then when I'm happy, my tics are very loud and very like in your face, and yeah, it gets a bit. So I kind of have to keep myself on, but I can still show those emotions like nicely. I just can't go overboard with that.
Yeah, got it. Now you mentioned an incident with a lady who had a hijab on. Could you tell me again what happened in that situation?
So what happened was I was just walking downtown and my arm reached out and I literally screamed at her saying it's too warm for a scarf. Luckily my partner was there and pulled me away quick enough before I could even grab it. But she didn't turn around, so I'm kind of hoping she didn't know, even though it was quite loudly said, but I don't think she knew what was going on. And like as I was going to grab it, she was already like behind me and I was already behind her. So touch wood, that kind of saved it. But for me, it was still very like, I'm not racist. Like, I don't care what people wear. I don't care people like, do you know what I mean? It's not my place to say what they want to wear, like, or practice, or so yeah.
These were not words that you had choice over saying, and also that you didn't have control of your arm reaching out to try to grab her hijab.
Yeah.
That's kind of sounds, to me, it sounds like the most concerning part of this is that your arm reached out and tried to take an action.
It's like a puppet. I've held knives to my chest. I've got marks on my arm before where I've dug a fork in too fast and all that lot. So it's, yeah, the self-harming ones and the more motor and grabby tics are probably ones to look out for, mainly more than what's coming out of my mouth. But
can you always differentiate when that is the tic compared to the DID?
So I don't actually remember too much of when Robert's out. I know that there was one time where I sort of let him have a little bit of a breather. We were only going to drop something off at the post office, and he I kind of let him out slightly, so he was in control, but I was kind of surveillancing what was going on, if you know what I mean. So it's like not too much. And he just went to somebody so they started talking, and he literally went, I was going to give you my phone number until you sounded like a cousin of the Queen, and just walked off. But then I kind of was like, great. And then the bloke came running after me like, why did you say that? So I had to explain that it was Tourette's, because even though I knew it wasn't, it would be very, very difficult. It's difficult to turn around and go, but that wasn't me. That was the voice inside my head saying that.
A lot of people don't know about DID, so it's really hard to explain it from square one, and a lot more people know.
I kind of use the outdated term split personality for them to even get an inkling of what you're on about. So
so I just want to make sure that I understand this. So you do know the difference of when it's the Tourette's and when it's the DID? Yeah.
So like the Tourette's is more of an impulse trigger, sort of like pressure build up, whereas the DID is sort of there, and then sort of almost feels like he pushes forward more than there's a pressure to do something. So
yeah, and you've dissociated, and your
and then obviously I get the
other
dissociative amnesia with it. So there's days where I'll be watching a TV show and I'll have to rewatch it because I don't remember what's going on.
yeah, got it. So just the kind of final thing that I want to find out about is the impulsive behavior side of it that we were talking about. So how often do the behavioral impulses go to that level where you end up doing something that could upset someone else, or or it could be kind of intrusive for someone else?
I can sometimes do I'm more susceptible, I know it sounds stupid, to impulsive buying. Like my brain will be, right, I want that, so I'm going to have it. So it becomes more of a need more than a want, which annoys me.
And that's not the DID, that's the Tourette's.
That's the Tourette's. So it's like it kind of molds into the Tourette's side. So yeah, it's kind of very impulsive, and I've ended up like back cupping like therapy, and that's now underneath. I used it once, now I don't see a use for it. And like I'm OCD with my DVDs, so if I like a TV show on TV, I've got to buy it on DVD because it's got to be there because I've liked it. I want to rewatch it, even though there's many different sites and that these days to stream on. I've got to have the physical copy, which annoys me as well because I'm kind of like, you can watch it online, but then it's just the case looks amazing. Think about how that'd look next to that lot. Yeah.
And then do you regret those purchases afterwards?
Sometimes I do, especially if they're, say, like purchases that are on a game, and I'm like, I really want it, and then I'm like, I could have literally used that £5 for something else.
Yeah. In that sense, would you compare it to bipolar, where there's like, with bipolar, you have the manic episodes where people can be very impulsive buying for one instance, and then there's the opposite side where they then get the depression side. Is there a comparison?
I would say that was quite a good comparison, to be fair. So bingo, bullseye. So yeah, that's literally how it feels. Yeah.
And do you get kind of mood fluctuations as well? Do you find that do you get a lot of emotional fluctuations? Yeah,
I do. I can either be very angry, standoffish, like very isolated, or I can be very happy and I want to be everybody's best friend.
Yeah.
And then, a minute later, I don't like them and I want them out of my flat.
Yeah, it sounds like such a difficult condition, and then understandably you experience depression and anxiety because of the roller coaster of what you have to go through with this condition and how debilitating it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, I've got used to the fact of my own company now, to the point where there's times where I just wish my partner would bugger off out for the night. And like, I just want the flat to myself, and I shouldn't feel like that, but I think over the years of losing people through trust and all that lot, is to sort of build up. Like sometimes I just want to shut the world off.
Yeah.
Don't want any, do you know what I mean? Don't want any interference. Don't want anyone there to annoy me.
Yeah. If you're in your own company, do you feel a lot more comfortable? So then when you need to tick, you can tick, and as a result, you probably don't tick as much because you're then really comfortable?
Yeah, I'm perfect on my own. To be fair, like, because I can just stick whatever I want on the TV. I can mill around and do my animals, and so yeah, like there's the term of overstaying like you're welcome, like, well, people overstaying their welcome is probably cut 3/4 shorter with my patients than like what normal persons would do. So like, if you're coming over for a coffee, come over for a coffee, and then don't just sit on my sofa.
There's probably people watching this who maybe suffer from this condition themselves, or they might have a family member or a loved one who suffers from it. Where can people find you if they want to ask you a question?
You can find me on TikTok and Instagram, which is Tourettes_lad_official. Or they can, if they're brave enough to try and search for me on Facebook. My name's Ryan Stevens. I mean, just give me a message. When people want to message me, it is mainly more Instagram or Twitter, which again is Twitter's the boy who tics, I believe. So there's a few things, and obviously I have my YouTube channel as well, and I do a series on Instagram called Tourettes with Friends. So it's kind of like I speak to other people with Tourettes. I've spoke to people with stutters and other different like mental health and neurological disabilities, and so yeah, I'm quite easy to find. Just depends if I read my messages in time.
Ryan, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain your condition. I think it's really helpful to raise awareness, and I really appreciate you just telling me more about it and helping me kind of understand what you have to go through on a day-to-day basis.